The latest pre-budget announcement of what will be in the budget from the Prime Minister there, a top-up for the Housing Accelerator Fund and a new $6 billion fund contingent on the provinces meeting a long list of requirements like implementing a Renters' Bill of Rights. The Liberals are trying to get Canadians to tune into what they're saying and convince them they can help solve their economic woes. Is it working? The front bench is here to talk about that. Former New Brunswick Liberal Premier Brian Gallant is with us. He's now the CEO of Space Canada. Former Conservative Deputy Leader Lisa Raitt is here. She's the Vice Chair and Managing Director of Global Investment Banking at CIBC. CTV News political analyst and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair is with us, as is the Toronto Star's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Rob Benzie. Hi, everybody. Rob, I'll start with you. I heard maybe not the Premier, but someone else in the Ontario government essentially say, oh, we're open to talks, but this is like a long list of things that we have to do to qualify for the money. On the specifics of the announcement, do you think many provinces are going to be jumping for it?
They may make noises about not going for it initially, but Vassy, I mean, we saw this from the healthcare money. We saw this from the daycare money. Provincial premiers are tapped for cash, and they will find a way to accept federal money if they can. And here in Ontario, Premier Doug Ford has kind of done a U-turn on fourplexes, and this is a problem for his government because they won't be able to qualify for some of this money that Mr. Trudeau announced today because they don't want to build as many fourplexes. They don't want to make them right of way across Ontario, even though you already have fourplexes in Toronto and other cities. In places like where Lisa in Milton, fourplexes are controversial. The Tories are trying to win a by-election in Milton, so they don't want to come out in favor of fourplexes. Maybe if they win the by-election, they might change their mind afterwards. But it's odd because this is the same government that made triplexes across the province. So it's an odd kind of a thing but I think they'll find a way to take the bread for sure.
Beyond the plexes aspect of all of this, Lisa, I mean, the federal government is essentially, trying to be as active as possible or look as active as possible on the housing file. But we've talked about before, they were pretty late to get to the idea that people were struggling in this area, that it was a crisis. Do you think on substance what they're announcing will resonate with those people?
Okay, two parts to the answer. Do I think what they've done is good? I do, because I was part of a task force on housing and climate. All of these are recommendations that we made as part of that task force. So I think that's great, and I'm glad to see them do it. The tricky part is what Benzie said, which is you have to rely upon your provincial partners and municipalities to actually do the implementation of these announcements, which can be tricky. The first part of the question, though, is this going to help them? And I think what I would say about this is the Liberals think it's old politics still, meaning you push out a busload of announcements, cater to a specific demographic. We all do it. I'm not just saying it's only the Liberals. And that's going to work for them. And I think they're going to find we're dealing with a much different generation of voters who have lost their faith in the authenticity of the Prime Minister. And as a result, I don't think it matters how many buses of how many promises you push out there. It's not going to work.
I think just jumping off what Lisa said there, Tom, the government is hoping to force that exact group of people who have tuned out because they perceive the Prime Minister particularly to be inauthentic, to tune back in and be interested by what they're hearing. Do you think so far, and we're about 5 announcements in, that they have accomplished that, or are they falling short?
They're falling short, definitely. It is the dance of the 7 veils, go all the way back to Paul Martin. And you recall that there used to be something called budget secrecy. The RCMP even investigated a leak of the Martin government. It's also a question of the privilege of Parliament to see things that are confidence first. But Mr. Trudeau's at that stage. It's all 3-point jump shots from center court. He's just trying anything he can to score. I'm not sure that this demographic is listening. That demographic, mostly the under 40s, what are they saying back to Mr. Trudeau? You let us down. We're the first generation in Canadian history to be poorer than our parents. Our chances of owning a home right now, the way things are, very slim. You haven't paid attention to it before. Now that you're starting to look at the horizon of the next electoral rendezvous, all of a sudden you've decided that you're going to pay attention to us. We don't believe it. And I think that that's where Poilievre has been scoring. This is the demographic that got Trudeau elected in 2015. I know, because I was there. And he got them excited. He got them engaged. He got them out to vote. And it was a great political success for him. But he's well into his 9th year now. They're looking at him and saying, hey, we're poorer, we can't afford rent, much less buying a house. And look at all the other things that Trudeau is promising. Yes, those are progressive things, from childcare to dental care. Yes, that is something that is helpful, but it doesn't make that much of a difference in people's lives. And I think that Mr. Trudeau is being seen now as a spendthrift. And I'll say one last thing. On budget day, since he'll have already given almost all the content of the budget, what's the one last thing that people are going to be concentrating on? It's going to be the size of the deficit. And that being the case, I'm not sure that it's going to be a great selling point for him from there on. So I would say, Vassy, a month from today, early May, we'll look at the polls, and I don't think that it'll have moved the needle in any way to try to help Trudeau. I don't think that this is going to work.
Do you think it'll work, Brian?
Tough crowd to follow here. So look, I think the idea of announcing stuff before, although I acknowledge Tom's point about sort of budget secrecy, from a pure comms point of view, and even from a policy point of view, there's some merit to it. I think what Tom's point was at the end there is absolutely right. What the focus will be on budget day is the deficit. It's sort of the macroeconomics of the budget. Well, I'm pretty sure even if they saved all the announcements, if you will, the announceables for budget day, that would still be the case. Would people cover a bit more of the programs that they're investing in or starting up? Maybe, but it would be drowned out. So I think the strategy from a communications point of view has some merit. Also from a policy point of view, to be fair, I mean, I've been there. It's one of the most infuriating things when you feel you have a program that will help the people that you serve and they don't hear it. And you can't explain, you don't have the chance to explain it because it gets drowned out with something else. So the idea of taking sort of, day by day to go through some of these programs, again, I think has some merit. To Lisa's point, I agree with the idea that it's probably hard right now for the Prime Minister and his government to really sort of be heard. And I agree that it's maybe hard for people to sort of hear those things and say, yeah, I believe this will happen. But I take it a little bit more from a macro point of view in the sense that I think that people are definitely hurting, they're disenfranchised. And any message from almost any politician that is hopeful, that is about, sort of positivity, what we can do, just doesn't resonate as much at this sort of juncture. And messages that things are broken, things aren't going well, we got to tear some stuff down. Those messages in that kind of climate tend to resonate a bit more, unfortunately. So I do agree that it will be tough for this to break through.